I asked them the question. I said, do you believe that you have some untapped potential inside of you? Very few people have ever said, no, I don't have any more untapped potential. Everyone always says, sure, I do. And said, well, what are you saving it for? Now's the time to use it. Yeah, one of the most famous ones in the real estate world is you only make money on the buy. That's a famous myth that's out there in real estate. It's one thing to sort of have goals and dreams, but it's the action that I took that really made the huge difference. A light bulb moment. And I quickly realized not only could I help a lot of other people build wealth in a very consistent format, but also I could make a huge difference in my own life as well and my family. And that's exactly what I did. Quality property in a quality neighborhood attracts quality tenants, making you quality profits. I purposely chose success stories of people in my book that didn't have 20 and 50 and 8,000 properties. I chose people with portfolios as little as 2 or 3 properties and how that has changed their life.
Welcome everyone to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of The Awakened Man and your host, Alan DeMonso. We all have a path chosen to attain financial freedom, don't we? There's so many of them, right? Like we can invest in the stock market. We can either do complex option trading, maybe do some swing trading, even the good old buy and hold strategy as well. You can flip houses, you can start a business, you name it. There's absolutely no limit to the choices that we can use that gets us to the point of financial freedom. But what limits us most is a lack of clarity on which way to go, a commitment to see that goal through, and we lack a compass for some direction in that allows us to attain that goal. Well, today we're going to shatter any limiting beliefs about what attaining financial freedom looks like, as my guest is going to share his journey towards his financial freedom. Now, before we get into all that, I just want to remind you to hit like, subscribe, and share on your favorite platforms. You can stay updated on the latest content and while helping me grow the Awakened Man message. And for that, I just want to say I'm truly grateful. So with that being said, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
So, as a customer, I always like to ask a couple of opening questions to help set the stage for today's discussion. So what does financial freedom look like to you? And how close are you to achieving it? Well, depending on how you answer that first question will have a huge bearing on your answer to the second question. But defining our financial freedom is only part of the solution. We still need to act while having the right mindset, because without both, there's going to be a strong likelihood that we're not going to get there, and we're just hoping that we're going to win the lottery. So instead, my guest today is going to walk us through how any of us can achieve our financial freedom by following a proven plan using real estate. So allow me to introduce my guest. Michael Dominguez is an award-winning sales representative and a member of the RE/MAX Hall of Fame and founder of the Doors to Wealth Real Estate Group, a team of realtors educating people in investment real estate. And after becoming a realtor in 2008, Michael bought his first investment property and added it to his portfolio for 10 consecutive years, completing over 300 investment transactions. Well, welcome to the show today. How are you doing, Michael?
Well, thank you very much for having me, Alan. I'm really looking forward to chatting and having a good conversation. So I'm doing well.
Right on. Good to hear. So, Michael, in my men's break, I like to talk about a lot of us being on our own hero's journey or that hero's quest. So tell us about your journey and how that paved the road for who you are today and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So if you want to go way back, when I was a teenager, I was one of those smarmy teenagers that when people were asking, most of my friends, what do you want to be when you grow up? And there was a teacher, a policeman, a fireman. My smart ass comment is I wanted to be a millionaire. And they'd sort of be taken aback by that. And I always said, I don't care how I become a millionaire. I want to become a millionaire. Yeah. And fast forward 5-7 years, I graduated from university in business and got the responsible job. Met a girl, get married, have a kid, get promoted a couple times, and before I know it, I was smack dab in the middle of the rat race with a lot of debt and not a lot of assets and sort of just continuing life and doing what everyone else is doing. And I remember when I hit 35, I had my aspirations of hitting my $1 million by 35, and of course, I was nowhere near that. And so, fast forward even a few more years after that, I'm now recently divorced. Have a I don't know how old, about a 6 or 7 year old son at that time, and sort of really hating the career that I was in. And but again, what were my choices? What options do I have? I was sort of in that situation. I had responsibilities, that sort of situation. Fast forward a couple of years more after that, I met a new girl. By the way, tip for any man who's listening to this: when you are looking for a second marriage, having somebody who has a solid income and more net worth than you do is a good place to start. Make a note of that, people. No, I'm being partly sarcastic, but honestly, it was a mindset stuff as much as anything. So we were in a better financial position, and I was in a position that I could take some chances. So I was introduced to real estate by a realtor, actually, who was also a broker. And she sort of said, "Hey, you'd be great for real estate." And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm sure you say it to all the guys." And she said, "No, you're special. You'd be really good as a realtor." So I gravitated. I did the research. I looked into it, and I became a real estate agent. Because of my prior background, I gravitated towards the investors right off the bat because they were more my people. I had that entrepreneurial spirit. I was doing a few entrepreneurial ventures in my lifetime and helped a lot of other people build their financial wealth. So this was my chance to continue that journey, but through real estate. And yeah, that was the beginning of the change of the life. All of a sudden it was like a light bulb moment. And I quickly realized not only could I help a lot of other people build wealth in a very consistent format, but also I could make a huge difference in my own life as well and my family. And that's exactly what I did.
Nice. And it's so important that what I liked about your story there is that you talked about, you got to that point in your life where you needed to take, something was happening, you had divorced and you needed to take ownership and responsibility. You did that. And a lot of the work that we do here with the Awakened Man is about having men understand that really the faith is for them to take responsibility for. They got to take the bull by the horns, and you did that and looked for something different. And I also like how you talked about having that entrepreneurial spirit. And I think a lot of us have that in us, but we just don't know necessarily how to pull that out, right? And so if it wasn't for having someone to be an advocate, do you think you would have found real estate, or would you have found something else to get you to where you are today?
Oh, I've thought about that a lot, and the answer is I probably would have found something else. I was very in tune with the franchising aspects of things in a retail, because that's what I knew. Wouldn't have had the same level of success as I did through real estate, but I was ready for a new challenge for sure. Having the right type of person in my corner, certainly, it introduced me to it, but I give myself some credit to not just simply move on to it, but really accept it, adapt to it, and make that my life. And it's one thing to sort of have goals and dreams, but it's the action that I took that really made the huge difference. And I was putting in those. I was now self-employed, and so instead of working 40-hour works, I was now working 60-hour work weeks. And so, yay, that's financial freedom for you right there. But what it did was, there's a quote from Dave Ramsey that I kind of paraphrase from time to time. But if you live like no one else today, eventually you could live like no one else in the future. And that's kind of where I where I got to the point where in my mid-50s, I'm now essentially financially free and retired if I want to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's a nice point about with Ramsey and that quote, right? And I think for some of us, some people may think of the idea of being an entrepreneur like, well, why would I want to work 60 hours a week? But the difference is that you're working towards something that's for yourself. And the only ceiling, as I did in the intro, notice in the intro, was the only ceiling for us is our limiting belief and our ability to really step into who we can be, right? And it exists there. Someone else sees that. And even though, maybe that's not for me, at least you took the opportunity to explore it a little bit and, look where you are today.
Well, and I ask a lot of people too that are sort of languishing right now and are trying to figure out where the next step in their life is. And I asked them the question. I said, "Do you believe that you have some untapped potential inside of you?" Very few people have ever said, no, I don't have any more untapped potential. Everyone always says, sure, I do. And so, well, what are you saving it for? Now's the time to use it and start taking some steps to put yourself in a position. Some people think it's risky, but the more research, the more education you learn in whatever venture that is, whether it's real estate or any other business, the more you know puts you in a better position to minimize your risk.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's get into a little bit about real estate. I want to talk a little bit about spend some time on your book as well. But just before we get in there, that over the years, cable TV's really filled our airwaves now with all these renovation shows, right? Investment shows, like you name it. But when you watch these things, I'm wondering that with each one of them, like, they make it look like it's just, hey, this is just easy. It just happens. I know it's 30 minutes or it's a 42-minute, depending on the station. But what are they not telling us, or what is it that we are not understanding when we see these shows about, becoming wealthy and using real estate to get there?
Yeah, you got to love those HGTV montages wherein basically less than 3 minutes they could go from demolition to actually already putting up framing, assuming that's going to just happen that quickly. The short answer is it's certainly not that easy. And if you're looking for the quick flip and the quick buck, I'm probably not the guy to talk to when it comes to that. I'm a buy and hold investor. I was focused more on wealth building versus cash flow and income early on. And in time, I kind of flicked the switch. So now I'm more focused on cash flow. But if the person, I'm hoping that the avatar of the person I'm talking to is either the person who's now in their 30s, 40s, 50s. Maybe they own their own home right now. They've got a little bit of equity. Maybe they're let's assume they own their own home. That's avatar number one. And in a situation like that, if they're being honest with themselves, probably 50 to 75% of their current net wealth has come from their own home. Now, imagine if they owned 2 or 3 or 4 of those properties, in addition to their own personal residence. They'd be in a far better position. The second component I'm talking to is what I call the house hacker. And they're someone who's currently renting right now, and they're trying to figure out a way of getting into the housing market. Across all of Canada over the last few years, there's been such a surge in pricing. Mm-hmm. Although there is a bit of a setback today, it still is significantly higher than it was just 3 years ago. So how is someone going to get into the housing market? Maybe you formerly owned a home and with a separation or divorce, you sold it. Now you're renting, or maybe you've never owned a house, but you're hopefully making some good money. House hacking is the strategy that I would employ for anyone who's in a position like that. And that is you live in one unit, rent out another. And that's really what I talk about in my book a lot is that's a way of getting started. And not only could that help you qualify for the mortgage and get you rolling in that way, where you might not be able to buy a house otherwise, but the extra income helps you qualify for the mortgage. But then on an ongoing basis, it really reduces the amount of expense on a monthly basis. And so instead of having the full household expenses, those expenses in some cases are cut down in half or even to a third of what they once were. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I kind of went on a bit of a tangent there.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like the idea that we're introducing the book now, which I want to get into next. And I like that strategy for that house hacking and being able to get started like that. And it's a great way. So let's talk about your book, Armchair, Real Estate Millionaire. So how did the book come to be, and what is it truly all about?
Yeah, so I was probably in my 42, 43, 44 when I got started in real estate as an investor. And my first property that I purchased was as much as a means of making me more credible to my clients, because I was working with investors. I thought this would give me more credibility, as it was building my wealth. But within a year or two after that, I started realizing, yeah, this is the path for my future. Mm-hmm. And so I was very fortunate that I started doing what everyone else did, and I was buying undervalued properties in secondary, tertiary markets that needed a lot of work, and I was putting a lot of effort into it, and I was having some frustrating results. I was getting tenants that were mediocre, and I was just getting, I wasn't getting the results I was hoping for, but I still saw the light there. And I was very fortunate that I had some really great mentors that that had no need to sort of take me to a side and offer me advice, but they did that. And I always thought the millionaires and multimillionaires would be in a position where they wouldn't want me in their club. They would almost want to push me back, and that was my own. I was in my own head, and so. But they actually brought their hand down. They pulled me up a rung, and they really helped me out, and they really guided me along the process and helped me form the concepts and the ideas that I now share in this book. And I always promised them and myself that if I ever reached a point, I would pass on my knowledge to the next generation of investors. And so fast forward to about 3 years ago or so, I was getting closer to my financial freedom number. I'd kind of sort of hit it. And I really felt that there was a book in me somewhere that, and I've been sharing it on a one-on-one basis with so many people here in my local market. But I thought for me to do more of a grand scale and to try to reach people that I would never have met otherwise, that's where the book sort of came about. So Armchair Real Estate Millionaire was designed. I wasn't trying to write the book to help somebody buy their 10th or 50th property, but to get them to buy, in some cases, just 1 or 2 or 3 investment properties, because so many times it's how to get started is the hardest one to do. And if I could sort of guide you to look a little differently and to focus a little differently and to buy in the right type of market where you get the right type of tenants. I use the quote all the time. It's a quote that I use: is a quality property in a quality neighborhood attracts quality tenants, making you quality profits. And that's really was my mindset. Many of my success stories I talk about in the book do as little as 2 to 5 hours a month in their portfolio. And this side hustle, a hell of a lot better than driving for Uber Eats, let me tell you, has made me a millionaire. So.
Yeah, fair enough, right? Absolutely. Yeah, don't want to do Uber Eats. So thank you very much. And it makes so much sense, right? And I like that you brought up the idea of mentorship, right? And I think that's another key into your success is that you were willing to go out and ask for help. You're surrounded by people, and we always think, don't we, that to your point, that these people don't want me to be a part of their club, or they don't want me to be, they don't want to really help me, but people want to give back. Right. And so because you were willing to do that, and they saw in you work ethic and your drive to succeed, they were open to doing that. And I think that's so important for our listeners to grasp, that it's more than just sitting in your, maybe you are sitting in your armchair, but if you're not active and you're out there and doing the work, as Michael was talking about earlier, then it'll be a challenge to find that mentorship. But because you applied yourself, they were there for you. So you talked a little bit about the type of investor you are. You're a bit of you say you're a buy and hold type of investor. But I'm wondering, is that a better strategy than others, or is there really a better strategy for folks to get into in order to attain their financial freedom? But how did you come up with that as your core strategy?
The question I ask most people is how many hours do they really want to put into this venture? If they want to turn this into their full-time career, then the buy and hold strategy may not be the sole and only strategy for you. You might be doing flips or property management for other people or what have you, be a realtor. But for the vast majority of the people that I meet, they've got their 9-to-5 gig that they're doing really, really well in, and they enjoy, hopefully. But nonetheless, they're making a solid income as a result of that. So this is a strategy that can help supplement your income, and not just supplement your income, but can also set your retirement date, in some cases a decade earlier, just by taking some very logical steps and building some real assets and minimizing your long-term liabilities, and all of a sudden getting to the point where you're making enough passive income where it's a cool feeling where you wake up in the morning and you're just thinking, well, what do I want to do today? Because you don't have to work, because your passive income is now making enough money for you to live on your daily and weekly and monthly basis. And isn't that the goal?
100%. And what a great definition for financial freedom, right? That this passive income that you've worked hard at to develop covers all of your daily living expenses. So you're really not tied ball and chain to a job or another career or what have you. Life is truly your own decision. So I really like how you set that up. So what are some myths that in real estate that you can bust for us today? What are some things that are still hanging out there and that people may think that, well, this is whatever belief they have about the real estate market?
Yeah, one of the most famous ones in the real estate world is you only make money on the buy. That's a famous myth that's out there in real estate. And I can tell you that there are properties that some people have told me I overpaid for at the time. And I've bought them on the MLS. I don't need to take advantage of grandma and hope that she's going to sell it to me at 20% below market value so I can make some money. That was myth number one, is if I buy at a quality property in a quality neighborhood and we're seeing steady growth and I can hold on to this asset for a long period of time, I can happily tell you I paid retail value when I bought it, and when I sell it, I'll sell it at retail value. And I can pretty much assure you that the difference is quite significant. So the next one is people tend to underestimate or undervalue the value of buying in a quality market. And a lot of investors, they feel they need to go to Buffalo or Pittsburgh or northern Manitoba to find this mining town that is now a third the population. You can buy this property for a song. And the reality is that you can buy a property using Manitoba as an example. You can buy it on the outskirts of Winnipeg, and yeah, you're paying a little bit more. But this subdivision home, I always say, if I take my DeLorean 20 years in the future, I could wake up and find myself in that same subdivision, and it's every bit as good or maybe even better than it is today. And housing, as long as it's a growing population, a growing market, if you're bullish on the Winnipeg population, for example, I can tell you that that values will increase, because as more people move into a market, you're going to see prices going up, because housing certainly isn't getting cheaper to build, and it's getting more and more difficult to build with all the zoning restrictions and such like that. So if you add 10% of the population, you only add 5% more houses. Guess what? The existing housing stock goes up more and more. So those would be a couple of the ones I always target. Is don't necessarily buy the crappy ass property in a shitty neighborhood, and don't necessarily have to take advantage of grandma in order to make some money.
Those are two great myths that for us to bust, because I've heard that time and time again, and where you make money on the buy, and that may be true in some aspects, but it's true from an investment perspective. Your definition makes so much sense, right? You want quality product in a quality area for your quality profits, and that to me resonates. And I think about it. Thanks for bringing up Winnipeg. That's where I'm located out of, and I can tell you. I remember reading about real estate years ago, somewhere, an article, maybe a book, and they always talked about that. You're in a strong housing market when when the subdivisions start growing north, because everything tends to build south, and that's what's happening here in Winnipeg. The north of the city to the perimeter and beyond is just exploding in growth, not just with residential, but commercial. It's just unbelievable how much we're growing here. And so the real estate market in this area for sure is growing.
Well, and to continue with that, and I can pretty much guarantee you that the person who bought a property 3 years ago, even if their cash flow hasn't been incredible, I think they've done fairly well in the appreciation game in Winnipeg in the last 3 years.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's a great point, because you talked about that earlier, right? About at one point you're about wealth building, and now as you've created your wealth, now it's a little bit more about cash flow. And that again goes back to that, what's the definition of a quality property? Maybe it is cash neutral or slightly cash negative, but it depends if it was bought in the right market, bought in the right place. And I know you talk about that in your little book, so I'll let you go ahead and expand on that.
Yeah, and I want to jump in on that, because a lot of the books that are out there talk about how you need to make a crap load of cash flow in year one, and that's not always the case. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan of creating secondary suites in my properties. So I try to have 2 units. So none of my properties are cash flow negative. They, at worst, they're cash flow neutral, especially after refinances. There's not a lot of cash flow there, because what I've done, for those that are sort of playing catch up here, is I buy a property, I then force the appreciation by building a secondary suite, and then I refinance it at that time. So now it's at the new market value based on the 2 units. So the cash flow is certainly minimized simply because of the fact that I've taken more money up. But then I've taken that money and used that to buy another property. And that's how I grew my portfolio. It's not like I had gazillions of dollars when I started. I had a house with a fair bit of equity here at the house I was living in. I got a home equity line of credit on it, and then used the down payment of the new purchases from my HELOC of my principal residence, and then I got a mortgage. And then and for those that aren't good at math, if I got an 80% mortgage and I use the other 20% for the HELOC, that adds up to 100% financing. It's not like I had a whole lot of cash to play with, and I had to keep recycling that money over and over again. And I have to be honest with you, there were a couple of the early properties I bought, I did sell because they didn't meet my profile. I didn't have the tenant profile I was looking for, and then over time, and the question everyone always says is, well, you can't be sure about appreciation. And on one sense, you are correct. You can't control appreciation. But by doing the research and by doing the education and finding a market that has a growing population, a growing GDP base, a growing job base, and other things that I talk about in my book about what to look for in a market, if you become the expert in that market, and it's a market that's growing by leaps and bounds, it's as sure can be that the values are going to go up. And it is no longer speculative anymore. You're just simply smarter than the average investor. The average investor, absolutely, you can't count on appreciation. But a sophisticated investor, it's just natural.
Yeah, great point. Great point like that. Listen, you talked about in your book a couple things I wanted to touch on here, and one of them you talk about is this Goldilocks principle. What is it? What is that all about, and how did you come up with it?
Yeah, it's finding the property that's just right. And I love single family homes. If I could own 20 condos or townhouses and they cash flow, I'd be all over that, because the tenant profile of a single family home is spectacular. I get people that are future homeowners that are now renting. I love them. Problem is, it's cash flow negative. I love the cash flow in multi-unit buildings, but a lot of those are in secondary areas of the city. They're, a little bit slimier areas. They tend to have a weaker tenant profile. They tend to have larger repairs. Like, if I replace my roof on this place, it costs $6,000. We just replaced our roof on our 9-plex, and it was $25,000-$30,000. Guess what? My cash flow for the year kind of went away just on one renovation. Yeah. So just be aware that the Goldilocks is finding the property that's just right. And I love my duplexes because I can get the tenant profile I love on the single family homes. I can get, in many cases, the cash flow I get in the multi-units. And there's a very easy resale opportunities with these properties. Not only can I sell it to a future investor, but I can also sell it to that house hacker, or a real trend in Canada is the multi-generational family, where mom and dad live on one level and the kids live downstairs because they just haven't been able to find a place. Or secondarily, grandma and grandpa are living downstairs because they need to sell their home and be closer to home. So there's a lot of potential buyers on my duplexes.
Yeah, great. Love that strategy. The other one I want to talk about is you're a big advocate, and if we're going to get into the investment property game, that there's a goal to become a member of the Triple Crown Club. What's that, and why is it so important?
Yeah, the Triple Crown Club is to get to 3 properties. And if you're in a market that has a steady appreciation of 4 to 5% a year, I'm just going to use 4% just because it's an easy math number. But by buying a property in a quality market and getting quality tenants, it's a pretty passive investment strategy. That's where I use the term armchair. It's still running a business. Don't get me wrong. You're still running your business, but it's a very passive investment strategy. But over the years, buying 3 quality properties in 3 quality neighborhoods in 10 years, this portfolio will make you into a millionaire. It's as simple as that. The numbers don't lie. And I'm taking a market where the average house prices are in that $500,000 range or so, which, most cities in Canada are already well past that number. But I purposely chose success stories of people in my book that didn't have 20 and 50 and 8,000 properties. I chose people with portfolios as little as 2 or 3 properties, and how that has changed their life. And they've set themselves up for financial freedom for themselves, their children. They can pay for their children's education. They can help them going forward, and they can retire earlier just on as little as 2 or 3 properties.
Well, and that's really a powerful strategy when you come to think about it. And that is, probably another myth that needed to be busted, right? That you need to have, oodles of doors. I know in real estate terms you talk about how many doors do you have, and so 2 or 3 doors in the right neighborhood, as you've been saying through this whole discussion here today, is really all that we need. Now, of course, you didn't do all this work on your own. You had to have had a team, people around that supported you. So who would you recommend to be the key people to have on our team if we wanted to get into the real estate investing and being able to guide us along the journey? So who would those folks be?
100%. And I don't want to start any conversation without talking about my wife. It's having a life partner who is rowing the boat in the same direction as you is so imperative, because I've been in a marriage where we were rowing in a different direction, and it's really tough to go forward when the other person's rowing a different direction. And so that's number one. The next thing I always tell people to do is the internet is a wonderful tool for learning and for sort of you can have 8 billion Facebook friends and stuff like that. But there's nothing that's as good as going to your local meetups and meeting people who are actually taking action and doing stuff. So I found that in my personal experience, the biggest action takers out there were the ones that were actually meeting with other action takers, because many people in your circle are not action takers at all. And if anything, they could be sometimes sabotaging your growth, your family, and in some cases with the best of intention, your family and friends sort of say, "Oh, that's risky," and "Are you sure you want to do that?" But then you go to a group where everyone's taking action, and they're actually applauding your success and encouraging you to be even more. But obviously, as you develop your knowledge and your base, and you start to find other people that are action takers, certainly having a really quality mortgage broker and realtor is an imperative part of the team for sure. Over time, you start adding in lawyers and accountants and all that stuff, but that's all secondary. But honestly, if I could, it may be not the answer you're expecting me to say, but having a life partner and attending and finding and networking with a group of friends or colleagues that are taking action are, in my opinion, are steps 1 and 2 to go forward. Because unless you've got people on your corner that are sort of pushing you forward, I don't know a lot of action takers who do it otherwise.
No, that is actually perfect, because the whole message around the Awakened Man is about us being conscious enough about what's truly important in our lives. And if we're not on the same page with our partners and our spouses, then life becomes a lot more difficult, because we can go after that dream of financial freedom. But if we have 2 different ideas of how that's going to be, or one's disengaged, then we're going to struggle in attaining that. And I think that's perfect. And I also totally agree that sometimes the network of friends that we have isn't necessarily the best. And in getting out there, and I like your term, being out with action takers and action makers. And I think that's so important. So listen, of everything that we've talked about today, and maybe we haven't touched on, what would be a takeaway that you would want our listeners to remember about our conversation today?
Well, you don't need to take action tomorrow or the day after that, but you should start taking steps to move forward. And your personal growth could be actually action taking right from the get go. But I find the people that are most successful are the ones that start to get out there and meet people, start to learn. They start listening. Obviously they're listening to this podcast, which is fantastic. But there are other great podcasts that are out there. There's other great Audible books that are out there. to start to learn and to just start to build your knowledge would be how I would advocate for anyone to get started. I'm pushing my 25-year-old son to start reading. Actually, he just yesterday finished Think and Grow Rich, apparently, and he made some notes, and we're going to be talking about it tonight. I'm giving him some homework assignments and such like that to try to get him to see some personal growth. And I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I'm actually saying, hey, if you finish the book and do a bit of a book report, I'll pay you $50, and then do another book and I'll pay you another $50. And so he's doing it partially for the money, but as a parent, I think I've tried to educate him as best I can, but I'm just a dad. I don't know anything. And but if I can have Robert Kiyosaki and Jim Rohn teaching him stuff, I'm very happy with that as well. So that'd be my advice to you, is to just educate, be ready to take action, and then it just starts making sense. And you don't necessarily need to buy 8 billion properties. And people sometimes reach out to me and say, I need to buy 2 this year and I need to buy 2 next year. And I say, if you can buy 1 this year, just 1 property, and even if it's next year, and then do that again at a year or 2 after that, you are light years ahead of 99% of the other Canadians out there. So.
Yeah, that's great. That's great feedback, and love to hear how you're incentivizing your son to do things, because really in the end, he's getting a lot out of that anyways, even though the $50, in the pocket may or may not stay there long.
Yeah.
Depending on what you've got him reading, and Think and Grow Rich, he start to realize the power of investing himself. And you're absolutely right. At times in our lives, right, Dad's really smart, and then there's times in our lives when Dad's not that smart. Yeah. And then eventually they come back to that point, I think, where our kids realize that the old man was actually pretty smart.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for that moment, but that's okay.
Yeah, it'll come, brother. So I just want to say thanks, Michael, for spending time with us today. We had the chance to achieve financial freedom, and we don't need to have hundreds of investment properties. We just need to have a few, and your system is proving that this can be done. So how would our guests get a hold of you and get involved with you and your work?
Yeah, so the book title again is Armchair Real Estate Millionaire, and my website is thatverybooktitle.com. And so absolutely, you can reach out to me through there. There's an info at armchairrealestatemillionaire.com, and you can certainly reach out to me there. If you're in my local area, and I'm in the Durham region, outside of or Whitby, Oshawa area, certainly you can reach out to my team, and we could introduce you to real estate investing from that perspective. But that's, at the end of the day, it's whatever your market is, start to do your research, build your team, and go forward from there. And yeah, if people want to reach out to me, absolutely, we could have that conversation for sure.
Right on. Well, I'll make sure I put all that information in the show notes so people can get a chance to reach out to you. Thank you so much again, Michael, for spending time today. It's greatly appreciated.
I appreciate you calling.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.